Which mid-round running back could be the perfect fit with Tony Pollard? All that and more in this episode of Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your
Locked
daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on
Cowboys.
Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. And joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, what's going on, sir?
Not much. We are talking about running backs today, and running backs that, it's funny. I'm just grinding, trying to get through now it's just a numbers game. Now I'm just trying to get through get my eyes on as many players as I can. And I'm going through last night and I'm looking, I think it was a Texas A&M safety, if I'm not mistaken. And
Johnson?
What?
Was it
Yeah, I
Antonio
think it
Johnson?
was. I think it was. Yeah. And well, I can't remember exactly who it was I was watching, but Roschon Johnson was actually the running back, and I was like, oh man, that number 2 is actually pretty good too. And I was like, oh yeah, I've already watched him. I wrote a whole report about him as well. So we've reached that part of the draft process where I have already forgotten the number of players that I have done reports on it.
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about some running backs that could be options for the Cowboys in the mid rounds. We've already done shows on Bijan Robinson and Gibbs and Zach Charbonnet. If you want to go back and listen to those episodes, you can. Today we're focusing on guys that could probably be picked by the Cowboys. I don't know. What do you think? Third, fourth round is probably where these three guys we're going to talk about could potentially land.
Yeah, and I think, some of the everydayers have probably heard us talk about these guys, in kind of very brief surface level ways. We're actually going to kind of dive down deep just in case these guys end up being the selection, because I do think that all three of these guys all kind of fall in that, not quite day 2, maybe one sneaks to the bottom of day 2, who knows, but definitely mid-round type running backs who we all think, spoiler alert, I think all three of these guys could potentially get drafted and then be key players, splitting carries with Pollard right away this season.
I think all the three of these running backs that we're going to talk about today, which is Tajay Spears, Zach Evans, and Roschon Johnson, are all guys that probably should be picked after pick 75, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're all gone by pick 125, right? That's kind of the sweet spot of where you draft these running backs. And let's start with Tajay Spears, who I think by consensus is probably the highest ranked player of the three. He is a super productive running back from Tulane, 5'095", 201 pounds, ran a 4.52 40-yard dash at his pro day. What did you see when you threw on the tape?
Well, when you watch him, he's shorter. He's undersized. You just mentioned it. He's 5'095". He's built like those kind of wide receiver running back hybrids you see. But he's got decent hand size. I mean, he has I think it was 10-inch hands, which for a guy that size are big, and that's important, especially if you want a receiving back, right? Because you want a guy who's going to be able to snatch that ball out and then quickly be able to convert it to a receiver. His whole thing is feet plus creativity equals shifty. Like he has incredible feet. He has great creativity to know where he wants to go. And then his superpower, because of those two traits, is just he's incredibly difficult to hit. He's dangerous in open field, and even in tight spaces, he has that kind of ability to make slight shifts and slight changes to kind of avoid the direct hit from bigger linebackers and defensive tackles, which means he doesn't take as many brutal hits for a guy that he's the size that you hope he wouldn't. He's also very decisive. Like, he doesn't necessarily have to be shifty. Sometimes when he's running like wide zones or anything where he has to put his foot down, he can become that kind of slasher where he waits, decides, and then slashes up the field. He has good explosion. He sees it all developing in the run game. He's very patient in pressing the hole, then nice through quickly. He trusts the process in the run game, which is important. There's another guy that we'll talk a little bit later who I feel like struggles with that a little bit, where this guy trusts his speed and we'll wait for the play to develop. This is Spears here. We'll trust his speed, wait for the hole to develop, and then get through right at the time. He's not trying to hurry through. He's not, impatient, which is an important thing. Not afraid of contact, but despite this willingness, he isn't winning many battles here. He's just not going to run through people.
He's just not a power player at all.
No, he's not going to bury guys as a pass protector either. I mean, he just doesn't have that in his bag. He's not afraid of contact. He's not afraid to get physical. It's just not. He's just,
it's not his game
because he's not his game. Yeah, it's just not what he does. He has enough power to function as an inside runner. I think there's going to be a lot of misconceptions that this guy can't be an inside runner because of his speed, because of the type of player he is. These guys often get pigeonholed into being like I always use pigeonholed incorrectly. He has a change of pace back. This guy can run inside. Like I don't think that there's an issue there. He has patience. He has vision. I do think it will be more of an issue in the NFL because of his size, and I don't think he's going to break a bunch of arm tackles in the NFL. But I do think he can run inside. I don't think he has limitations there. He doesn't have a ton of experience as a receiver, but clearly there's a huge amount of upside there, right? He's shifty. He can run routes well. It seems like, he has all the, accoutrement of a good receiving back, but it hasn't been put on tape a lot. He just hasn't done it a ton. Where does he win? He's a valued change of pace back. I think that, he is a guy that I think his upside is he could be like the Pollard of his team, right? Where he starts out as this kind of dynamic guy that you just need to get touches. And then as he develops a little bit more, you could, especially the inside running game, you could have him as kind of the featured back with another sidecar with him. Unanswered questions. Can he gain some more lower body weight and become something more? I think that's the next step for him becoming where Pollard is now. Is he needs to kind of gain some weight in his lower body. He needs to gain a little bit more power to kind of break through some of the tackles and inside runs. And I think that he will become a guy that I think, could be featured on the team for several seasons.
I think he's got a little bit of DeAndre Swift in his game, a second round pick from by the Lions a couple years ago. I think of the three running backs, he's probably the best, but I think I question his fit with the Cowboys the most, just because you already have a guy in Pollard who is bigger and I kind of think more explosive. I feel like you need a guy that's a little bit better inside running. Again, you mentioned it. Tajay Spears can do that, but that's not his game, right? His game is big plays. And I know it sounds bad. You don't want two guys that can create big plays in your offense. That's not what I'm saying. It's just, I think you do want somebody that complements Tony Pollard at least a little bit better early on.
I think sometimes when we talk about running back and the running back position, we forget that there is like a certain amount of dirty work that has to be done by a running back to get through the season by somebody, right?
Yeah.
I tend to agree that I feel like if the Cowboys take Spears, it's almost like a Pollard replacement in the future.
Or insurance, right?
Or insurance as opposed to like a compliment to Pollard. So I almost feel like you and I talked previously about positions where they could potentially double dip. I almost feel like if you draft Tajay Spears and let's say 90, right? Or in the fourth round if he gets there, you're probably going to feel like maybe the 6th or 7th round, maybe just a very highly sought after undrafted free agent. I would feel a lot better about going after another running back who you feel like could be a bruiser, could take, just lion's share of carries, someone who can just run the football and just to take some of these carries off of these other two running backs.
Yeah, I think like a perfect example is you pair him with Mohamed Ibrahim, who was at Minnesota, who's like a 7th round pick or undrafted free agent, but his job is going to be that short yardage runner. That's a perfect fit with Tajay Spears, but I got to believe, I think the Cowboys do have interest in Spears after a really good Senior Bowl. He was awesome in the Senior Bowl week. Just, I do wonder about his fit long-term with Dallas. Let's talk about another running back that I like quite a bit from the SEC when we get back. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Grand slams, no-hitters, and double plays are back, and there is no better place to get in on the MLB action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That's because right now, new customers can step up to the plate with a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon, sign up, place your first bet and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win. We've got baseball going on right now. We got the NBA playoffs. We've got NFL draft prop bets that you can bet on. So don't miss your chance at a no sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball. All right, Landon, let's talk about Zach Evans, a running back previously from TCU who transferred to Ole Miss. I want to know your thoughts on Evans.
Well, first of all, this is your last year to make that SEC joke because pretty soon Texas is going to be in the SEC too. Yeah. So, Zach Evans, I think I got a lot of just people asking me like, what were your thoughts on this guy? What were your thoughts on this guy before I got there? So I was excited to see. I heard a lot about kind of his very interesting journey of how he got to where he went. 5'11", 202, 10 and a quarter inch hands. He's got a nice wingspan. He ran a 4.5, 157, 10-yard split. He's got a very balanced body type. He's just
actually showed up at 208 as pro day and ran a 4.5.
Did he really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so he's even adding more bulk. So and honestly, I think that's not terrible.
No.
I think he has the kind of a balanced body type. He has good length, good hands, average bulk. I think you're gonna hate this comparison, but I think he has a Darren McFadden type game to him.
It's very upright, right?
Yeah. Well, it's not even just that. It's not even just the upright running style. I think he needs a runway to a large degree. He has a bit more wiggle than Darren McFadden did. But if you remember Darren McFadden coming out of Arkansas, right? Like there was some of that in his game too. I think ultimately what we saw after years and years of taking hits, and by the time he arrived at the Cowboys, he was a guy that clearly needed to kind of power scheme or something that allowed him a little bit of runway to get going. And I think in the similar sense that once he gets going, his second and third gear transition is incredible. Like he really, really destroys angles on safeties who are coming down, seeing him already running and thinking, okay, here's where I'll get him. And he blows past their angle. And I think the other thing too is that the only way you're going to survive in the NFL with an upright running style is that you have got to be creating a ton of force as you're running full speed. And I think that's where Zach Evans thrives. When he's running full speed, nobody wants to tackle him. I think he breaks through all that. Go ahead.
Can I give you my comp for him really quickly? Because it's funny that you picked Darren McFadden because I actually picked the running back that came right before Darren McFadden. I think he reminds me a lot of like third and fourth year DeMarco Murray in Dallas.
Okay.
Right. Where Murray was kind of that upright runner who I don't think he had a lot of natural power, but once he got down to like the second hill, downhill a little bit, he was just running so fast. He would lower his shoulder and he could run over guys. He's not as big as DeMarco Murray, but I think their play style is kind of similar.
Yeah. I think the difference between and I think that's a good comparison too. Again, it's this, he doesn't have instant acceleration. He doesn't have instant power, but once he gets going, he is very hard to tackle and very difficult to stop. I think that plays into a little bit with my issue with his running, not his running style, but I think his running mentality. I don't know what to call this, but I think what I saw on tape is a guy who forces it at times.
He's not patient. Like he's just not patient.
And I think it's because he's afraid. He wants to get running. He wants to get going. He doesn't want to get caught behind the line of scrimmage because I don't think he has an answer for that necessarily. But I think once he sees the crease, he wants the opportunity to get going to that second gear because he knows that's where he's dangerous. I think he needs more experience as a receiver, but his hands are good enough as an outlet option right away. And I think that actually as an outlet option, he's dangerous because that's one opportunity. He gets the ball in a little bit of space. If he can take 2 or 3 steps, he's already in that kind of
very much like DeMarco Murray was in that 2014 season. You swing him out to the ball and he gets a couple steps and okay, now you can be a weapon.
Yep, absolutely. And so I think that there is some of that to him. I didn't really see him running a ton of routes though.
No.
And I think that's part of that Lane Kiffin offense, right? Is that they kind of run simplified things or to one side, and they're throwing the football to their wide receivers.
Yeah.
I didn't see any pass pro snaps. I feel like mostly what he was doing on passing downs was as an outlet receiver, maybe a Texas route,
Yep.
maybe just a hook in the zones just to be kind of an outlet guy. Where does he win? He's a toss power runner. Give this guy the ball on the outside with a convoy. Let a couple of these blocks hit, and then let this guy streak up the side of the sideline. And good luck to any safety who's going to try to tackle him. Unanswered questions. Can he gather enough tools to hold down a roster spot in the NFL? That's my concern right now, is that he's kind of it's almost like Jalen Tolbert, right? Where you have all these aspects that will make a good runner at some point, but is it put together enough year one for him to see the field a ton? That's my concern. I think with the Cowboys, it's less of a concern because you have a guy that you mostly want to feed the ball to, and he's not necessarily going to be asked to do a bunch of receiving stuff or a bunch of pass game stuff. So I think that the Cowboys can probably use him maybe a little bit better than a team that has no running back situation.
Yep.
But that's my main concern, and I think that's why he's probably more of a mid-round guy than as opposed to late day 2.
Yeah, I think if you get him in the 4th round, that's where I'm really, really happy about him. I think he needs to improve in being patient and how to read blocks and all that kind of stuff. But he runs so hard, and it's clear that he's physically gifted, and he plays so much bigger than his size. Again, he was listed at 202, weighed in at 208 at his pro day. He can move bodies, like even in short yardage stuff. Like he just gets downhill so quickly. He gets low a little bit on the short yardage stuff and can kind of move guys out of the way. I just think he's a guy that you draft late day 2, early day 3, you put him with Tony Pollard, you give him 7 or 8 touches a game, but in 2024, maybe you have him play 12, give him 12 to 14 touches. I think there's some upside here.
I definitely do too. I think that this is the guy that I would say of the 3, you would probably get the least amount from year 1. Right. But I think that by year 2 or year 3, there's a very good potential that this guy's the best running back.
And again,
of the 3.
I hate to keep going back to the comparison, but not too dissimilar from DeMarco Murray, who did not do a lot as a rookie, right? There was somebody the Cowboys drafted in the 3rd round from Oklahoma, didn't play a lot, but by year 2, he took over the starting role and was super productive from there on out. So again, I think 3rd, 4th round is probably the sweet spot for him. Let's talk about another running back that we know the Cowboys have some interest in Roschon Johnson from Texas when we get back. All right, Landon, we are back talking about Roschon Johnson. We just wanted to thank you guys for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every day. Tomorrow we're going to answer some more of your Twitter questions. We got a whole bunch of them that we got last week that we didn't get through, so make sure you guys tune in for that. Let's talk about Roschon Johnson, who I got to say is probably a player that I'm significantly higher on than the consensus. I think most people have him out as a 4th or 5th round pick. I think you could justify taking him in the 3rd round, but I want to know your thoughts on him.
I agree, actually. I think Roschon Johnson, to me, of the 3, is the one that I don't think I would rank him the highest, but I think he's the guy that I want of these 3 the most to fit with the Cowboys. Yeah. Absolutely. 6 foot, 219. He's a big running back. He plays like it. He runs through tackles. Strong, solid build for a running back. He carries his 220 very cleanly. Mm-hmm. The weight is very nicely distributed. This is a guy who was a option quarterback in high school. Has tons, and despite not getting a ton of carries, obviously because he played kind of a Robin role to Bijan Robinson's Batman, right? Mm-hmm. He still has a ton of experience carrying the football. You kind of see that because he has very reliable hands. He doesn't fumble the football a lot. Mm-hmm. He's hard to bring down. He's a tackle breaker with fantastic contact balance. Again, going back to the fact that he has a ton of carries in high school, he has experience. He has the kind of muscle memory there. He's a football player, flat out. He is a guy that you pull off your bench. He's the guy that you pull off your bench and put in an emergency to play a position he's never practiced before because 4 guys got injured at the same position. Like he's that guy. Right? He's He's the Jeff Heath. He's the whatever. He's a guy who's played every position. He knows everyone's assignments. He's just the coach's dream, right? Incredibly versatile player. Played on all special teams units and was the leading tackler for the Texas special teams units. Played lead blocker in some I formation stuff with Bijan Robinson at times. Yep. I'm pretty sure he
wildcat quarterback.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm pretty sure he could play quarterback in a pinch if you needed him to. Definitely could be a wildcat quarterback, as we saw in several snaps. I mentioned he's a dual threat quarterback in high school with a ton of experience carrying the football, very reliable hands. Despite having experience as a ball carrier and playing running back for 4 years at Texas, he's still developing running back traits, though. You see him very naturally carrying the football, but the specific to running back kind of carrying things, kind of reading blocks, patience, some of that other aspects of that stuff that you see, he's still learning that. I just wanted to point out that he had a 4-year career at Texas and had only like 400 carries, which, just to give you a comparison, Jamar Gibbs, who we talk about having a very few amount of carries in general, had about 400 carries in 3 years. So this, despite having played all 4 years for Texas, he doesn't have a lot of wear and tear on his
Bijan body. Has 500 carries over the last 2 years, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Strong and willing pass protector. This is one area where I was excited to see, because based on everything else in his game, he knew he was going to have to be kind of a supplemental running back, and so pass protection was going to be a big part of what he was going to be asked to do. More than willing. He's good at it. He will get fooled by sim pressures at times. There were a couple different times where it felt like he picked the wrong guy that he thought was coming, and then an inside blitzer, and he rushes up to block him, and then suddenly the blitz is coming from the side. So I think that's all about just being in the quarterback room with the quarterback and making sure that everyone's on the same page with what's happening. Blitz pickup. Good speed, but not breakaway.
Nope.
And my final note on here was fits the Cowboys' needs, is very clean. I mean, obviously, this is a guy who can come in and play a bunch of special teams. He can come in and get a bunch of carries. There's lots of things that he can do for your team. Where does he win? He's a jack of all trades running back. Unanswered questions. Can he add some threat to his game? That's the only thing that I didn't really see, is he doesn't really make you hold your breath. When he's carrying the football. It's more just like, can you bring him down after 3 or 4 yards?
He seems like the A++ version of like Rod Smith, who we loved for a long time, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's a better, he's more dynamic Rod Smith, right?
Yes.
Like, and not that he's dynamic, but he's more dynamic than Rod Smith.
Yes. Can I give you some high school numbers for him really quickly?
Yeah, because they're fun, man.
Yeah, 2 years at Port Groves High School. 7,700 passing yards, 4,900 rushing yards, 85 touchdowns.
Yeah, that's just absolutely insane, man. Those are crazy. In 2 years, right? Is that
2 years? So yeah, you're basically totaling,
3,500 yard passing yards.
Yeah,
almost
14,000 yards in 2 years is pretty ridiculous. I just think if you read like Dane Brugler's draft guide, and you just look at like some of the quotes, like some people have around him, like Mr. Accountability, special team staff absolutely loved him. He was one of the hardest workers on the team. Everybody praises his football character. He'll block, he'll do short yardage, he'll catch things out of the backfield. That's exactly the type of running back you want to gamble on in the mid rounds. Like, he literally checks every box. The only thing he doesn't have is home run speed. Again, 4.58 at the combine. But we just saw that the NFL's leading rusher this year in NFL was somebody who didn't start in college, Josh Jacobs, who ran a 4.66 40-yard dash. So it's not going to prevent you from being an all-pro caliber running back. That's just not his game, but he's going to win in so many other ways. And I got to say, when you put on the tape, there's like 1 or 2 runs every game from him, and you're like, ooh, that kind of looks like the first-round running back right there. Like, he's hurdling over a guy, or he's throwing guys to the ground with stiff arms. I think my comp for him is like Najee Harris, who the Steelers drafted in the first round a couple years ago. I see a very similar style of running back.
I think the thing that excites me the most about him is that I think there's upside here. Like usually with these kind of guys, like, you don't see them with a lot of upside. They're kind of come in fully formed. They have a very specific role. A guy that can play a bunch of special teams. He can be kind of your down roster running back. He can take a healthy share of carries. I think he has some development, as he starts to become even more developed as a running back. Specifically as a running back, not just a ball carrier, as a running back who, seeing things from the backfield and getting more experience in running wide zone and just the feel of what it takes to do things from the running back position as opposed to the quarterback position, which, even now after 4 years of college, he still has way more carries as a running back, as a quarterback than he did as a running back.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I think that there is some development that can happen here. And I think that at the very minimum, you're drafting a guy who is, like you mentioned, an incredible locker room guy, an incredible
Gonna play on special teams,
Going
right?
to play on special teams, going to be an inspiration to the running back room, a leader. Those are all kind of things that, there's not metrics for that, but that stuff matters in a locker room, especially if you're drafting like a mid-round running back.
Yeah.
To get all that extra stuff is really, really great.
Here's what I could see happening pretty easily. Let's say the Cowboys draft him in the 4th round, which would be probably right around where his value is at for most people. He's your 3rd running back going into the season. He's playing special teams. And let's say it's Ronald Jones, who's your RB2 or whatever. I could see a situation by week 8, they cut Ronald Jones and Roschon Johnson after making so many plays on special teams. Whenever he gets touches on offense, he's making plays. All of a sudden is your RB2 and he's getting 9 touches a game. That won't shock me at all.
I mean, honestly, it wouldn't shock me if we got into training camp and he took the RB2
It
job.
wouldn't shock me either.
And Malik Davis is the one who actually kicked these guys off. That's the thing, is that I feel like, this is a guy that if you draft him, the key would be to get him going early. Whether it's definitely in special teams, but I think that you should try to give him carries early, because I think it's more valuable than just trying to throw them away at with some of the other veteran running back. I think this is, like I said, this is a guy who could develop. I definitely think he could take the kind of, it's not a starting running back, the other running back role by midseason. I think he can also take it before the season starts if he has a good camp.
So ranking them for the Cowboys, I would have them Roschon Johnson, Zach Evans, Tajay Spears. I think they're going to be drafted in the opposite direction, but how do you have it?
I think I would probably do Roschon, Tajay, Zach.
Okay.
But I mean, again, like, I think we're ranking them because we're being asked to. I like all 3 of these guys as options. They are all different, slightly different types of fits.
Yep.
I think the fit for Roschon Johnson is too perfect. That's why I would put him at the top. But I think Spears is a dynamic player that maybe the Cowboys don't need right now because they have Pollard, but they will definitely need a year from now and 2 years from now. And I think Evans, if you draft him, is a guy who, maybe he doesn't give you as many carries as those other 2 guys in year 1, and you can supplement that with another running back, whether that be what you have in the roster or another guy down the road. But I think that by year 2 or 3, he could really, really take off and be a guy that maybe you're drafting a Robin to his Batman.
So I could see that. Like him a lot. It's a good running back class.
It is a good class, that's for sure.
If you want to wait until the 3rd, 4th round to get a running back to pair with Tony Pollard, I think you're going to be very happy with the options that are available to the Cowboys. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every day. Again, tomorrow we'll be back answering your Twitter questions. Go follow the show on YouTube, Locked On Cowboys over there. You can go follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher. We'll see you guys next time.